welcome to In Conversation with Hemali. It's a big hello from Singapore. With me is Randall Chong, a Singaporean who sells secondhand books to help children and youth in some of the world's most isolated communities get an education. The 28-year-old founder of Books Beyond Borders collects and sells quality secondhand books to fund educational projects in rural Nepal. Randall runs Books Beyond Borders single-handedly. Basically he does everything from building the website to handling his social media and even packing the books for sale. He also commits 100% of all the donations and profits from the book sales to fund educational causes. His goal is for every child to have access to education. Welcome, Randall. I am so pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Hemali, for doing this, also providing us a platform to share our story. I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you, Randall. So I'll begin straight away with my questions to you. From world hunger to extreme poverty, there are so many worthy causes to dedicate one's life to. How and why did you choose education?
You're absolutely right. So actually, my end goal in terms of working in some of the world's most pressing problems is ultimately tackling rural poverty. That's because if you were to look at the bird-eye view of most of the problems like shelters and basic healthcare, diseases, illiteracy, and even problems like discrimination, it's a result of poverty. So
Sure.
one of the biggest reason I found why children in the developing world are dropping out of school early isn't really because the school is 3 hours walk away or they don't have a library in school. It's usually happen when the family can no longer pay the fees, or they start to think about the opportunity cost of the child when they are in school, when they could have been in the fields working extra labor to feed the family. So poverty is a very, very complex issue. And a lot of times it's not just about the lack of money. There's politics involved, there's culture, and a lot of different barriers that that a lot of we need to think about before we can tackle it at scale. And I don't think we are ready to step in there yet. So I chose education because it's a first step. I feel like it's one that can potentially have a domino effect on poverty. And also because I am very passionate about education and lifelong learning. And I just feel happy knowing that I can make some impact in the classrooms. So it just makes sense to me.
Fantastic. And I think living in Singapore, both of us know how much the country values education, isn't it?
Exactly.
Absolutely. It's outstanding here, really. So Randall,
Right.
I read that Singaporeans donated, about $90 million in the first 5 months of 2020, which is equal to a whole year's donation. Is it fair to say that Singapore is more philanthropic country than many others?
I would love to think so. But honestly, I don't know because, we don't have like the exact data of comparing Singapore versus other countries with, similar GDPs versus their philanthropic efforts. So it's very hard to say. Plus, this year it's a bit special because of COVID. So we definitely see the rise of donations. What we know is that there's a lot of donations channeling into local causes like the migrant workers problem in Singapore,
Sure.
but away from foreign causes. So I also know that a lot of organizations that are focusing on projects overseas in Cambodia, in Vietnam, they are, we see a lot of organizations shutting down this year as well. So, it might be because the funds are channeled from foreign causes to local causes. But either way, I hope that we can continue to encourage more giving in Singapore.
Yes, for sure. I think the experiences that we are going through right now with COVID has made us all a little more sensitive towards the needs of others. And I'm sure,
Yes,
we'll do a great job in doing better for people around the world.
for
You are an
sure.
example already, 1 second ago. So, Randall, what were you doing before you started Books Beyond Borders? What was leaving behind that life tough for you?
So before I started Books Beyond Borders, I was working in a technology-based startup company. Just like the last 5 years of my career, I was always involved in startups, building businesses, and I think I figured out that in the very early of my professional career, I there was one thing that I didn't like, which is to kind of work for somebody else.
Okay,
And I always wanted to work in startups because I wanted to kind of learn the ropes of how to build an organization, how do we start something from ground zero. So right before I was started Books Beyond Borders, I was involved in a technology-based startup based in Bangkok,
hmm,
and um, yeah, so that was what I was doing. My
okay,
role specifically was more on the business side of things, so on how do I expand the business to other countries. Um, so was leaving behind that life tough? I think for me it was a very easy decision because I just had to answer one question for myself, which is, am I okay to give up that paycheck?
hmm,
And if I'm okay to give up that paycheck, everything else, it's an easy yes. I get to call my own timetable. I don't have to,
sure.
rush for Monday morning meetings, all the emails and stuff like that. I get to do what I love to do,
Mhm,
plan what I love to plan, and execute what I think, is right.
mhm,
So the only thing that may be a little bit tough also was the thought that I may have to venture into a space where I have no experience in, to the whole social space, into countries where I've never been before, into
mhm.
all these communities. So that might be a bit tough. But at the end of the day, just like any other business organization, it's all about, you learn on the go. You're never prepared. So it was a great experience.
I'm sure it must have been. And when you say tough or not tough, definitely taking a decision is not easy. You
Yeah.
were able to take one, and that's fantastic. And more so, you took a decision to reach out to many more people, and that too, away from where you live. And that's
Yes.
something really big that you've done. Is this something that all young people are thinking? I mean, because you all belong to the younger generation, where they
Sure.
want to do their own startups and they want to kind of plan things where they can be of help to others. I
Yeah.
what do you
I definitely seen a rise, especially in my generation, millennials, that are more focused on purpose-driven companies rather than simply out for profit. And I also think it's driven by consumers, that they are
think?
more conscious about what they're paying for.
Okay.
If you were to look a decade back, people would go for the product with the cheapest pricing on the shelf. But
Yes.
now, people start to question, right? Is it sustainable? Are you using eco-friendly products? How's the
Yes.
packaging like? So I think that kind of forces a lot of entrepreneurs to rethink their business model,
Sure.
and the whole line between profit and purpose kind of blurred right now.
Absolutely.
Even on the investors side, investors are kind of looking at supporting and investing in companies that look beyond the bottom line, right? So they start to look at, are you doing something good back for the community? So I think all these different factors, with the government grants available for companies that does social good,
Mhm.
really kind of changes. I believe not just now, but maybe the next 10 years, it's going to be necessary, not just kind of like an added bonus.
Absolutely. And I think your generation is setting an example for the ones who are growing up right now in school and colleges to take
Yeah,
that step also forward and believe in oneself. Wonderful. Thanks
for sure.
so much, Randall, for sharing this with me.
Hmm.
How do you assure that the beneficiaries have been affected by what you do, and how do you measure success of the project that you do?
Sure. So this is a great question. It's also a very complicated one. Now, measuring impact, especially when you're working in these really, really poor developing communities,
Mhm.
is not only complicated, it's also a very expensive process,
Right.
especially in the education space. I can give you an example.
Mhm.
So there are organizations that build wells and organizations that build school libraries, like what we did in the first year when we first started the organization.
Mhm.
Um, and while we can see that beneficiaries are using it, they are getting clean water, the students are going to the library,
Right.
it's difficult to measure how many people are actually getting healthier from clean water,
Sure.
or how many students have improved their reading and comprehension skills because of the libraries.
Mhm.
This is so I'm not saying this because like there is no impact. There is an impact, just that to actually measure it requires a lot of pilot studies, and
Sure.
you need to run tests, so it's
Yeah.
expensive. And this is why we stop funding projects that we cannot measure and pinpoint the actual success data.
Uh-huh.
uh, we now find it much easier to support local organizations that have already proven impact on the ground. So one
Okay.
of our local partner right now is called Teach for Nepal, and basically what they do
Mhm.
is they are led by local leaders. They train over 100 fellows in the city areas. Most of them are graduates, and they
Okay.
deploy them into rural villages and rural schools to teach grade 8, 9, 10
Fantastic.
students. Yeah, and you can see with data that in schools where they are teaching versus other rural schools when they are not, there are more graduates. Students are more exposed to new projects. The teachers are using more up to date resources to teach in the class, and our job is to fund their work so they can continue doing what they do for the beneficiaries. And it's for us, we start to look at more of like qualitative kind of measurement rather than quantitative, I think.
Yeah.
Again, bringing back the whole well and
Yeah.
example, right? A lot of non-profits out there would look at, oh, we funded 100 wells this year, but that might not be able to make a lot of impact because 99 of the 100 wells may be broken after a year.
Absolutely.
So it's very difficult to measure that.
Right.
And for us, when we measure our success based on how much our grant can support our local partners. It could be allowing our partners to hire more teachers and
Mhm.
then in turn reach more students, or it can be even as a small scale as being able to help fund a science teacher in a classroom providing materials so he or she
Right.
could better deliver a quality experience for their students.
Wow. Now, so Randall, you mentioned an organization. Could you name that organization again, please?
Yeah,
That
it's
you
called Teach for Nepal.
teach for Nepal.
Yes.
Maybe if you could share the link with me, I can have put it onto the
Oh, most
description
definitely.
also. Wonderful. All right.
Most
So coming,
definitely.
it's wonderful. Yes, you can't be measured, but you can see the success happening, isn't it, Randall? Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So how do you define your immediate goals and differentiate to those that are your long-term goals?
Sure. So I assume you're asking about Books Beyond Borders immediate
Yes.
and long-term goals, right?
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Our immediate goal is for the organization to
Mhm.
remain operationally sustainable. That's really important for us. That means that we must be able to pay ourselves, all our
Right.
bills, have enough to invest in growing the company,
Yep.
and also generate funds to continue supporting our partners through micro grants. That's
Mhm.
the most important, because if we can't sustain ourselves, there's no way we can be supporting others in the long term.
Of course.
Um,
Yes.
my long-term goal for Books Beyond Borders is to be able to fund longer-term projects that may be higher in risk. That again, as I mentioned earlier, that we are able to tackle rural poverty. So
Mhm.
these can be projects like creating jobs for mothers in villages,
Right.
Because one of the big problem that we found out was that when kids are dropping out of school, it was actually they had to help their mothers. Most of the fathers in
Right.
the villages have migrated to other countries to work,
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of students are dropping out of school because their mom need help
Yeah,
in the
needs to go to
field
work.
or don't have money. So imagine if you can create
Yeah.
an income generating project that you support giving income to mothers.
Mm-hmm.
It will allow them to have the income to not only put their children in private schools but
Yeah.
also let their kids stay in school longer. So there's a big effect on education itself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
mhm.
No,
And
so
this
you
is
said
kind of
that
like the
you're looking at a
projects.
bigger picture, just not
Exactly.
educating, but educating the women also. And I believe, once you educate a woman, you're educating the whole village. Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely. S-
Sorry,
yeah.
you were saying something.
So
Go ahead.
these are more riskier projects that may cost tens of thousands of dollars that we just don't have the capacity to fund right now.
Right.
So my long term goal is to be able to fund these kind of projects that can have impact in much larger scales beyond just in the classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And the only difference is that we don't want to lean and rely on donations. We want to be able to generate the funds ourselves through our very unique business model, which is running the online bookstore.
Right.
Because I've been, when we first started the organization, we've been asking for donations for the first year, and
Mm-hmm.
if there's one thing I learned, it's that it's not sustainable. When you have an economy crash or you have the
Right.
pandemic, people stop donating to foreign
Yeah.
causes. So if we were to continue relying on people to donate money,
Yeah.
it's very
It
reliant
won't work.
on external factors.
And
Exactly. So we
yeah.
want to generate the money ourselves and then fund the projects that we want to fund.
Mm-hmm. So, Randall, what age group are you kind of helping out in Nepal?
Right now, we are supporting students mainly from grade 8, 9, 10, because that's where our partner Teach for Nepal it's teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But you also see an impact down to the primary level because when all these secondary students are motivated, they are
Yeah.
inspired by the teachers,
Yeah.
they become role models for their little
For the
brothers and
young ones,
sisters at
yes,
home. Yeah,
that's right.
so
Well,
it's a
well
great
said. Yeah.
effect.
So, Randall, for my viewers, I mean, this question uh, is that if anybody wants to kind of reach out to you, or what is the way to support Books Beyond Borders?
Sure. So there are two ways where you can support the organization. Number
Mhm.
one is, if you're looking for a book, we have a great variety of books out there on our
Mhm.
platform, and we put 100% of our net profits to fund projects. So by purchasing books, you're doing us a great help. The second is if you have books lying around, or you can start your own little book drive, personal book drive, helping us collect books that are generally in good condition. That will
Oh,
also be very helpful. Yeah.
that's something that I'm sure practically anyone and everyone can extend themselves and do. And I hope
Yeah.
my viewers, you are listening to this and you decide to take action on this. It's just doing a little bit away from what your routine is.
Mm,
Thanks, Randall, for answering all this. And I
no
I want
problem.
to ask you something. Can you share a defining or a heartwarming moment you have experienced in this journey?
Sure. So there are a lot of stories. I spent a lot of time traveling, backpacking through Nepal, living in villages,
Mhm.
visiting schools, and I always tell this story of once when I was, doing my regular visits to school. I was in
Okay.
this very rural school near the border of India,
Okay.
and we had this habit of asking students like if they can anything they want in the school, what would it be? And there was this boy. He was from an English class. He was a president of an English speaking club. He said he
Okay.
wanted a first aid kit. Um,
A
yeah, he
first
wanted
aid
a first
kit.
aid kit. So I got really curious, like
Oh,
why he wanted that. And then we decided to visit him and his family, just kind of learn more about like what first of all why he would say he wanted
why?
a first aid kit, and also to kind of speak with his parents. He's a grade 8 student called Ram, and then when we visited his community,
Mhm.
it was as expected a very poor community. So I've been to a lot of different poor communities, but the community that he's in was one of the poorest that I've ever been. They were in one of the lowest caste, and when I got there, I saw that they were living in a very small little hut,
Okay.
probably 5 people, and then they had different kind of animals. They had pigeons and their little some animals living
Yeah, I'm
all in the
sure
same little
hens.
hut.
Yeah.
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 So I sat there and we spent a bit of time speaking. So when I asked him like, why did you say you want a first aid kit,
First
and he
aid
said
kit.
like if so a lot of students would walk hours to school, they would play in school, and then they
Mhm.
get hurt, and then they would not turn up to class just because they are hurt. And if they don't have
Oh,
basic thing like the first aid kit, why should they ask for anything else? Which makes so much perfect sense to me, and I
wow.
don't even think I would. I was never expected an answer like that.
Yes.
Um, and so one of the things when you visit families in Nepal is that they treat guests very well. They make sure you have the water, you have snacks and stuff.
Oh,
So
nice.
obviously it was a very poor low income family, and
Right.
he offered a drinking water from like a metal tin. I'm not sure what
Okay.
you call that, but they drink it from a tin. And because I've
Okay.
never drank out of the tin before, I wasn't sure how exactly do I drink it. I kind of spilled on myself, and he got the impression that it was dirty.
Oh,
So he immediately um, he went to dug out his savings and went over to the nearby shop to buy bottles of water, which they don't actually buy bottles of water. They actually drink the water from the well.
right. Right.
And they bought chicken, which they don't usually eat meat. It's usually for big festivals, and they bought snacks just because
How
I was
lovely is
there.
that? Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
after speaking with the father, I realized that they make probably $1 a day. So that kind of that visit would probably cost them a week of what they would have made. And I got so
Wow.
guilty after that and I never usually do this. I took out all my money. I told my translator to take out all his money. We left it with him. Um, and until today, we still kept connected with him.
Oh, nice.
But the reason why I tell this story is because there are a lot more students with such potential like Ram. It's not just him around,
Sure.
and they have just so much more potential
Yeah.
to be successful. When I before I left his home,
Yeah.
I saw that there was a bunch of like radio that are dismantled, and I asked him like, "What is this?" And he would
Right.
say he
Yeah.
would go to all these scrap yards, and he would pick up electronics because he loves science, and he would pick them out one by one, and he would start learning about these. So the point is that it's stories like these that keeps me motivated,
Right.
and I just cannot wait to reach out because it's a ticking time bomb, right? When they drop out of school, chances
But
are
it's
they're never
true.
going back.
Yeah.
So if you can quickly identify students like these, fun projects that
Yeah.
they are able to support students like them, we can have a big impact on not
Yeah.
just him himself, but to the rest of the community.
Absolutely. Wow. 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 This is
Yeah,
such a beautiful story that you shared. Um,
it is.
why was it Nepal?
Funny story. So the short story is, I always lived with this mantra of doing one thing that scares me every year,
Okay.
and it just so happened that in 2017, my personal challenge was to hike alone in Mount Everest base camp to Mount Everest base
Interesting.
camp. Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to go somewhere not just mentally challenging but also physically. I've never hiked
Mhm.
in my life before. I've actually never seen snow, experienced winter.
Really, and straight
Yeah,
there.
immediately. Yeah, so
Yep.
it was a big challenge.
Wow.
So when I did a Google search, and I realized that you can actually walk if you're willing to walk 2 weeks in the cold in the Himalayas. You can see Mount Everest, and the starting point is actually Nepal. So
Okay.
that's the reason why I've been to Nepal. So it was nothing to do with Nepal. It was all about the mountain. And then I think through the experience of seeing the lives over there, visiting the people, then it became
Mhm.
about the country.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah.
So it was people that you met over there that kind of inspired you to do something for them.
Yeah, so I wrote in my story.
Yeah.
I think on the 7 of 8 day when I was trekking, I met these. So it was in the midst of December, actually
Mhm.
around this time. It was
Okay.
really cold. There was no one on the trek, and I would walk every day, 7 8 hours alone, and not see anyone. And there was
Yeah.
this young portal that was following me. And then because he was the only guy on the trail, we became friends for that day. He started speaking English, and we would just walk together to keep each other safe. And I just casually asked him, like, is he tired, working like this, transporting goods? And he said, like, he used to walk 3 to 4 hours to get to school, and then now he just have to work. So it got me thinking at that point, like, where do students go to school here? Like, I don't even see any school around. There is I got really curious. One thing led to another. I happened to be invited to a school later, and then it was then I saw why kids are dropping out of school. It's just a place that wasn't built to be successful. So I think from one thing led to another. It just like.
But it's very interesting, Randall. You have lived in Singapore and you have grown up here, and here, we have our schools right near our homes. We don't even have to go 100 kilometers.
Sure.
Exactly. And yet you kind of noticed all that, and that's really fantastic. Great job, really, Randall. And what kind of a message would you leave for your fellow social enterprise founders?
So my message is for social enterprise founders, or just generally entrepreneurs. It's not to get caught up with the word social and let them get in the way of building the organization. I feel like they should not be afraid to take risk to compete with other for-profit companies in the market. And the whole social space has this. A lot of founders are afraid to, for example, pay good money to hire great talents. They only use volunteers. They don't dare to spend in marketing and invest in things that's necessary to grow the organization. And this is why we see a lot of social businesses get stuck. They cannot scale. They are small, and then you see all these for-profit companies that just growing and growing and growing. But if you cannot grow, you cannot compete in the market at all. So my biggest message is not to focus on the word social. In fact, I believe that there is no difference from a for-profit, non-profit, or social enterprise. We're all building businesses. And the ones that are actually great, that separates the great from the good, are the ones that are both profitable and purposeful. So yeah, that's what I hope people will understand.
Such a lovely message, Randall, and I'm sure people would understand because you say it in such plain, simple words and yet impactful words. So before you go away, let's play a little game, okay? 3 questions,
Sure.
3 more questions rather. It's like a burst fire, okay? Yeah, I won't give you time and you just quickly answer, okay? All right, so the first one, pasta or pizza?
Pasta.
All right, 3 things you cannot live without.
3 things I cannot live without is books and exercising and my bed.
Okay. All right. My third question. Would you rather go 10 hours ahead of time with $1 million or 10 years back with all the knowledge you have today?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
All right. Would you rather go 10 hours ahead of time with $1 million or 10 years back with all the knowledge you have today?
Oh, for sure, 10 years back. You cannot buy time. I would take 10 years back.
Absolutely. Well said, Randall. Thank you so much. Thank you, Randall. Selfless contributions are the best and the greatest assets of our society. Volunteers like Randall, Chong generously dedicate their time and labor to run charity programs. Thank you so much for the wonderful job you do, Randall. You bring positive aura around you and inspire all of us to play our parts for a better tomorrow. May God bless you for your tremendous initiative. And my viewers, step ahead. Take that little time out of your schedules and join Randall's cause. He is reachable on the link that will be provided in the description. Do it. Just take that step ahead. Thank you so very much, Randall. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure speaking to you. See you guys next week. Thank you very much, Randall.